You're listening to a CNA podcast.
Well, hello everyone. Today is the 16th of February. It's a Friday, and just moments ago, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Lawrence Loh gave us Budget 2024. Now, this is one of the biggest announcements outlining the government's agenda for the year. And yes, there was quite a lot that was rolled out, and you've probably heard about most of it by now. So in today's discussion, we're going to jump right to the heart of it. What does this budget mean for me and you? Which announcements show a key shift in the 4G leadership? And what is this budget really all about? And joining me online are Terence Ho, Associate Professor at the Kuan School of Public Policy.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Also, Professor Lawrence Loh, Director of Center for Governance and Sustainability at NUS.
Hello.
All right, gentlemen, welcome. Now, a quick take from the two of you. You've heard about the budget speech, and if you could put into a couple of words, how would you describe this budget? Lawrence, you want to go first?
Well, it's well calibrated, well measured. It's all for the future.
Okay. What about you, Terence?
I think it really gives flesh or substance to the Forward Singapore agenda, albeit the first installment, as they put it. And it's a very inclusive budget in terms of addressing different segments of society, different demographics.
In fact, there was quite a lot of goodies rolled out, and on the tip of many of our tongues, we're thinking, is the elections just around the corner? Did you get a sense that this might be an election budget too?
It's probably not the election budget, but the beginning of a journey towards possibly preparing. It could be just before an election this year, or could be even the sequel next year for the next year's election. So the options are open on the table.
So a fairly good installment plan, so to speak. All right, let's jump into the heart of it and start off with a discussion about workers, because a lot of changes to this landscape, and SkillsFuture credit in particular has received a big top up. We're talking about $4,000 for those who are 40 and above, and $3,000 training allowance if you do a full-time diploma. Now, I've got to ask, does throwing more money at this really help? Because based on data, and I know my own personal experience, I haven't been able to use any of my SkillsFuture credit. And for many people, they're kind of stuck trying to use it up as well. So is this really helpful? What kind of difference will this make? Terence?
Not everybody would be able to use it, but for those who are looking to make a significant investment in skills, this is really more substantial than the previous amounts that have been given out. The door is open for those who are serious about, retraining and investing in a full-time program and a longer program, such as a diploma, to build up the skills in a new area. I think this would be quite welcome, and hopefully it would move the needle for some.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. It's definitely a big push and gives you funds to do it. But the question is, some people are saying they need support from their employers, for instance, to give them time off to do this. So why not have that incentive go to the companies, to employers?
If you look at what is happening now, many of the skills are quite person-centric, rather than getting it through the employers, which means some of the allocation will be more enterprise-specific rather than skill-specific. The good channel is going to the workers themselves. Administratively, it's even easier to handle, but more importantly, it shows a signal that retraining, reskilling, development is actually a personal responsibility.
If I want to do it, but I can't get time off to do it, and my employer is going to say, if you take time off, I'll cut your pay, you got to go on no pay leave, then I'm stuck too, right?
We need both employer-led as well as worker-led training. So I think there is also a SkillsFuture enterprise credit. And indeed, much of the training, to be very relevant, has to come from the employers, which is why we have company training committees that NTUC has set up. But at the same time, there may need to be something for the individual as well, so that in case somebody needs to change firms or change sector, it cannot just come through the employer. So I think we're trying to find that balance where individuals, if they really want to take time off from work and maybe even leave the employer to do something to pivot to a different sector, they have that choice.
Okay, let's move on and talk about financial support for workers, especially those who get retrenched, because that's been a big concern, and we've seen quite a few retrenchments happening in recent times. Now, the government has announced that there will be a temporary financial support scheme for these retrenched workers. Now, no details yet, but does this come as a surprise in the sense that a scheme like that coming out, was it just a matter of time, and what do you expect it to sort of look like when it's rolled out?
Let's put this in perspective. To begin with, I don't think we are about to go into the realm of unemployment benefits. And I think this last thing we want is to actually move into squarely a welfare state. But having said that, I think there are also certain human-centric elements which come into play because a certain displacement, even though temporarily, might create certain hardship. The challenge now is to really find a sweet spot, a niche where we do not want to send the wrong signals that sometimes it might have people finding it more beneficial to be unemployed than
Right.
actually to be gainfully employed, which happens in some advanced economies. So going forward, I think we need to actually focus on the part that give the hardship, but at the same time, continue to urge and incentivize them to be economically active.
Any idea what this might be like for the man in the street? What will they actually see, and what kind of schemes are we looking at?
They mentioned this before, so it doesn't really come as a surprise. The choice of the name as well is carefully chosen. It's been referred to as a re-employment support, the idea being that it's not just something that you get if you're unemployed, but it's really to prepare you for re-entering the workforce and giving people the financial peace of mind to be able to train and prepare properly for a good job rather than feel pressure into taking the first job, any job that comes along. So it will be an interim financial support. There will be looser conditions than the current ComCare support so that more workers, not just the very low income with no financial support, can benefit from it. But at the same time, I think it will be tied to certain obligations such as job search or training. Right. And it probably can't be too generous. It must be meaningful in terms of quantum, but not excessively generous.
And of course, it's very tough to get that balance right. And it does sound like, in a way, I can also tap on my SkillsFuture credit because that's the whole idea. I think the push is for me to try learning something else before I need to look for a job, not wait till I'm without a job and then do that.
Yeah.
All the support that's coming out, it's obviously very good. If people are able to tap on it meaningfully, it will definitely see a significant upside. Do you see any challenges with that, with sort of having this implemented? Is just throwing money at the issue going to be a real problem solver, or will there be other things that come into play?
The key challenge is trying to strike also good balance with trying to prevent workers being displaced for too long. Relating my personal experience, I've been quite involved in many skills future funded programs. Many of the participants actually come to my class very interestingly, even without their employer's knowledge. They take personal leave, they pay maybe 10% of the total cost because the rest is all captured by the government. In some way, many of the people in my class, first of all, they say they want to make themselves retrenchment proof. They take on the personal responsibility in case a day come when the other word is put to them and they are actually optimized in terms of manpower in their company. They are ready to move to the next step. And secondly, many of them consciously want to be actually pivoting. Going in the future, workers are now trying to take on the onus of being, I would say, adaptable to different situations themselves because they know the last thing they can rely on is certainty. And in companies and employment, you see many of the displacement now in high-tech sectors. This is the booming sector, but yet it's the one that has been releasing more people.
It's touch and go. For them, they grow when they need to, they cut back when they need to. And actually, it's fortunate that the group in your class seemed to have more foresight and more forward planning. But one would argue that many others may not be as privileged. Maybe they're holding 2 jobs to support the family. They can't take time off. And if employers aren't supporting them, then they are quite literally stuck in those circumstances. And more SkillsFuture credit is not really going to help them in that sense.
This whole idea of career resilience in the form of second skilling, taking ownership of one's career health is really the way to go. The measures in this budget will actually help because of the training subsidies, especially for those who are taking longer full-time courses and may need to take time away from work. So I do think it will make a difference, but of course, still issues to do with mindsets, and every person's circumstances differ. Some people will still find it a challenge to pursue such training, even if they have the financial means. I mean, you mentioned there could be other family or other time constraints.
All right, let's move on and talk about CPF because that was another exciting change to it. They talked about how CPF contribution rates for those aged 55 to 65 will go up in 2025. And the special account, it will be no more. It'll be gone. So why do this and how do you think it's going to affect people directly? Lawrence?
First of all, you have to look at the fundamental purpose of the CPF system is actually for retirement. Even if we do it for housing or even investment, these are just means to the end of providing assurance and confidence when you actually become economically inactive after a certain age. All the measures in place, anything specific, is all aligned towards this fundamental goal. For example, why do you actually need special account when you reach the age? Is it just more because of the interest rate differential? I mean, there's no reason why they should exist. And I think now with the increasing proportion of people who are in the more elderly group, more senior group, they also need to take a more significant burden in trying to make this adjustment is actually totally in line with what the basic objective of CPF is all about.
So it's a bit of streamlining. Terence?
Yeah, I think retirement adequacy is really something the government is laser focused on because of the social compact, which is the idea that if you work and contribute to CPF, you will have enough for retirement. All the schemes, including the sort of enhancements to the match retirement savings scheme, to workfare, to silver support, to even topping up IT graduates who are taking diplomas. All that is really to prepare people for retirement adequacy. I agree with Lawrence as well. The removal of the special account for the seniors who already have a retirement account, I think that makes a lot of sense. It rationalizes the system.
Thinking as a typical Singaporean, I'm not there in the age group yet, but they'll be asking, at the end of the day, does that mean less money in my CPF account or does it mean more? Okay, never mind. I won't put you on the spot. This is another discussion for our other podcast, Money Talks, where we can talk about all the CPF-related issues. But Lawrence, you want to say something?
Just one sentence to answer your unanswered question. I think it means more at the right time when it's needed.
That's a nice way to put it. More at the right time when is needed. Okay, let's talk about the enhanced retirement sum because that also is being increased to 4 times the basic retirement sum, which means the enhanced retirement sum in 2025 will be 426,000. That's quite a hefty increase. Again, explain to us why this move, why now? Does it just mean I have more money stuck in CPF?
I don't think it means that you're forced to go up to that amount. It just gives people the more flexibility if they wish to put more aside through the CPF system. For the sort of middle income group, they would have other means of investment and saving as well. Any further flexibility through the CPF system gives people more options. I think it's a positive move.
It reflects the increasing range of needs now when you have a populace that is more used to a higher quality of life. We are no longer seeing people going into retirement and moving into a very Spartan lifestyle. So I think we need to adequately provide and trying to increase in this aspect. It's totally in line with the natural development of our society now, our expectations.
Right. And we must expect and know that cost of living continues to increase. In fact, should we expect that this number will keep increasing year on year to take into account things like inflation, and other aspects? What do you think?
All the retirement sums from the basic retirement to the full and the enhanced are all based on, among other factors, the expenditures and the rise in the cost of living. So that's built into the yearly increases. This move is going to change the multiple between the enhanced and the basic retirement sum from 3 to 4 times. But all the sums will move up.
So it's good overall. For those who can afford to, you can save more, and that, of course, will earn a higher interest rate too. But cost of living is very much an issue, and I think on a day-to-day basis, many households struggle with that. More CDC vouchers, $600, half at the end of June, half in January 2025. More cash, YouSave rebates. Now, no one is going to reject this, and everyone's going to say, great, thank you so much. But I have to ask, is it starting to come a bit too often? I haven't even used up my current batch of CDC vouchers, which we just got very recently. And I'm like, wow, another batch? So I have to say I'm surprised. And are we almost giving it too often where it becomes normalized and expectations then start saying, hey, when's my next one?
This is always a balancing act. On the one hand, the needs are real. The concerns with the cost of living are very real and visible to everyone. As long as inflation remains elevated, even though it's moderated somewhat, people and firms, they do expect some help. But I do see an attempt in this budget to make a transition from the near-term support to the more of the capability building, which is really to increase people's earning potential through skills and productivity. And besides the assurance package, which is really near-term a short-term help, almost like a band-aid. There's also been enhancements to the structural or permanent transfers, such as the workfare income supplement, the silver support as well. So I think we need both the band-aid as well as the structural transfers, and then most importantly, to equip firms, individuals with the earning capacity.
In some way, it is almost like a progressive adjustment to cost of living. Administering all these vouchers is actually not trivial. Administratively, it's costly. But sort of like a progressive tax system implemented at the point of consumption, which is not feasible. This is in some way an inbuilt progression for the GST system. It is about the most equitable way of running how life should be organized, how purchases should be.
And it does make sense, as you mentioned, is the easiest way to sort of dispense the money sort of fairly across the board, and you can choose how to spend it. Can we start expecting this to become the normal thing, that every year, every 6 months, I get a bunch of CDC vouchers? What do you think?
This entitlement will definitely seep in, but I think along the way, perhaps in the next few years, we should adjust the tab again so that it does not become an annual feature. If you become an annual feature, you might as well just give a standard grant to everybody right from the start without going to the rigmarole of doing it U-Save, SNCC, all that. So, and then like SG, I even lost touch on all the nomenclature.
Granted, it's there and it does support, and it makes a big difference for many, especially of the low-income families as well. So we must appreciate that. Let's move on and talk a bit about education. Terence, you mentioned that earlier about ITE, and in fact, I was just at ITE College West this morning to speak to some students, and it's wonderful to see that there was so much energy and enthusiasm for what they were doing. This is really a great move where they're giving $5,000 into their account for school-related things when they sign up, another $10,000 into their CPF ordinary account after they complete their diploma. So this, I have to admit, sounds like a big incentive, but why specifically this group? What kind of messaging is being sent out here?
The Forward Singapore report, the ITE group was specifically mentioned because I think for the more equitable society and workforce, we don't want the pay differentials as well between the polytechnic graduates, university graduates, and IT to be too wide. So while this doesn't address the whole problem, I mean, it's one aspect of it, which is giving them a head start in terms of the CPF savings, in terms of defraying the cost of the upgrading. But more importantly, it's a signal as well that this is really an important part of our workforce. We're going to emphasize the hands-on skills, and hopefully employers as well will give opportunities to them. We need a whole of society, a whole of workforce effort. Just giving additional money to the students is a good signal, but wouldn't address the whole issue.
One thing I really need to rationalize and maybe analyze is, why do we actually go only to the diploma group in particular? Obviously, I think it's more than just even trying to remove the disparity between the degree and diploma, but looking more fundamentally at where the skills training is. University education by nature would be more broad-based, so they are not specific to giving you the necessary competency to plug and play into specific workplaces. So the broad intent is, if you go to the diplomas or even ITEs, this is where when you do an investment in training, the returns are more immediate. The payoff is immediate because you can literally walk into the workplace. You are actually job ready.
Right.
From university education, I know maybe Terence will agree. I mean, you will take certain gestation period for the generality to be translated into the specificity in terms of job application.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we go to the poly, for example, you learn very practical skills that you can use tomorrow after you graduate, but then some will be asking, why only the ITE students? I go straight into a polytechnic. Why don't I qualify? Because I'm getting a diploma too.
Yeah.
Why not me?
I think some of these comparisons will be sort of inevitable. The policy won't be able to please everyone, but I think it's for a very significant group of people, of students, this will make a difference.
If we really want to grow those who are getting diplomas, then should that not also have been some other incentive? Fair enough, we may say those from ITE may need a bit more support, but then there'll be others in the poly who will say, well, can't I get some support too?
We should not even just look at it from the educational or job training perspective. But I think if you read large, the issue is actually trying to promote a more harmonious society based on social equity. And I would say maybe even, unfortunately, the way many advanced countries in their natural development will tend to give premium to higher form of education, which is already felt in Singapore. So the people with postgraduate degrees, they just run away too fast from the rest of the pack. In this way, there's also a social element in having this move beyond just the job as well as the educational dimensions to the issue.
Okay, I just want to ask you for your last thoughts about the budget overall. How do you feel this is all played out? And in your opinion, what kind of a budget is this moving forward? Terence?
This budget, I actually found there was quite a bit of emphasis, not just on the economic and social dimensions, but also on security, on resilience, on national unity. This really supports the whole Forward SG idea and the theme of building this shared future together. The various aspects of the budget did correspond indeed to the Forward Singapore agenda. It really delivered on being the first installment with a promise or teaser of much more to come.
Lawrence?
I think this budget is actually somewhat unique like no other, in the sense that we already have a very clear strategy. Forward Singapore, many of the underpinnings were already very explicitly put up. Like in any business, usually you have your strategy first, then you do your financial allocation. And in many countries, sometimes we do the financial allocation and then we figure out what the strategy is. So I think for once, we move on to a new curve where we actually know a bigger picture where we want to go. Then we channel our resources accordingly. I think this is actually the distinctive difference in this budget, that a strategy has become so clear before the finance come into play.
And it's interesting. I agree with both of you. It does feel like this is just one part of a much larger picture, so to speak. I feel that Singapore is very fortunate that, in a way, we have the resources. If money can fix a problem, you put money there. And sometimes you spend the money first in order to incentivize the action you want from the people. Usually, very often in finance, you do it the other way, right? You budget and you plan and then you put the money in. So part of the bigger picture, I just hope that this is something that we can all agree on. Gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, because I'm sure this is all part of a much larger and bigger discussion that we'll be having over time throughout the year. For those of you who haven't used your SkillsFuture credit, like me, I'm going to consider really trying to do something this year, so I encourage you to do that as well. And of course, I'm going to be enjoying my CDC vouchers with more Hokkien mee and prawn noodles and all that. Thanks for listening in. This is Heart of the Matter. A shout out to the podcast team, Joanne Chan, Crispina Robert, Junaini Johari, Saya Win, and Tiffany Ang. And I'm Stephen Chow. I'll see you real soon. Bye for now.